on January 25th. I have any late items, Mr. Ferrero?
Yeah, yes, Your Worship. The city manager asked me to add item 4C. It's going to be about integrity group contract. Integrity group contract under 4C.
Group contract under 4C. Thank you very much. Anything else?
That's it.
No? Okay, thank you very much. So I need a motion for the adoption of the agenda as amended. Moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. I need a motion for adoption of the minutes, the special council of December 3rd, 2015. Need a motion? Moved by Councillor Thorpe, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Any discussion? No. All those in favor? Carried. So, moving on to 4A, Cultural and Heritage Project Grants, Nanaimo African Heritage Society. And the purpose is to obtain council support for the recommendation from the Culture and Heritage Grants Appeal Committee and approve the Culture and Heritage Commission recommendations of $3,400 for Nanaimo African Heritage Society. And I have a delegation request from Miss Shalima Gant. She could please come to the microphone. Please introduce yourselves and give us your address, and then you have 10 minutes.
Yes, I'm Shalima Gant, and I live at 427A Prideaux Street. My guess is...
I'm Sherry Berry, and I live at 38 Front Street.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Just want to start off by saying thank you and special to Councilman Fuller, and happy birthday. Thank you for having us here at this time. We have been waiting patiently for. It was obviously early on when we received a call from the city that we were awarded $3,400 for the cultural grant, and of course you all know we appealed that price, that money that was issued to us, and now we're here to ask you if we can have those funds released so we can go further with our project, which starts promptly February the 1st. It's Black History Month, and we would like to have no further delays in our functioning and how we need to get going with that project. So we're asking you to okay that fund and release the funds to us so that we do not have to wait any longer.
Yes, that is actually a motion here on council. Any questions for any of the delegates? No? Anything? So move receipt of the delegate? Move. Seconded by Councillor Bestwick. All those in favor? So, Councillor Fuller or anybody, staff had anything to? No?
So we're here for, excuse me, I'm sorry. When I first introduced, I should have said that we were here for two particular reasons, but the first one was the release of the funds. And so, what have you decided?
Well, that's...
You
Do you have a second part?
The second one is one
Sorry,
that I would
I motioned
prefer.
for there. Go ahead. My mistake. Go
The
ahead.
second one is the one that I would prefer if you can give us confirmation on the first one before we go into the second part of this, just so that we're not. We don't want to compromise our chance of having those funds issued to us.
Well, that's a hard sell.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you something and then I'm going to get something. Is that what I'm saying or hearing?
Well, no, we've already been allocated those funds, so it didn't sound like anybody had stopped us from getting those funds. We're here today because we were told that after we went through the process that we would have to wait another month, the end of February. That's no good to us because the end of February is the end of February. So we asked to be here special today so that we can have those funds to go forward with our project.
And I think
there's a report
and recommendation on that too. So I believe there is. So
does that mean that's not a foregone conclusion? Is that what you're saying? That we would receive those funds?
Can I have staff make a clarification on this, or is there a clarification? I believe the people were ready to go. on this
So, Your Worship, that's the motion that is in your agenda package. After the delegation is received, you can start considering that motion.
considering
That's the whole
motion,
point
so-
of the presentation.
So we have to receive you now so we can go on to our vote. And you will, I think, understand the vote. So I will move receipt of the delegation. Moved? Oh, you have a question? Oh, okay. We have some questions then. Councillor Pratt. Oh, wait a sec. Go ahead. Councillor Brandon, go ahead if you want a clarification.
I just wanted to clarify with the delegation, what you're asking for essentially is that whatever amount of money you are awarded tonight through this process, you would like it to be given before the first of the month.
That's right.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification. Now,
I'm assuming that you will also make an argument that you would like more, but that,
Not necessarily. The argument is about the process.
okay, thank you.
well, thank you. Councillor Pratt.
I'll hold my comments until
Okay.
we've had that vote, until the second part of the delegation. Because what I'm hearing is you're wanting to present on in two different timeframes.
We're here for two different reasons. We're here so
Well,
that
it's all
we're
into
here so that we would be able to receive the funds so we can go forward with our project, which we applied for our funding and we were received
I
the
understand
funding.
that part.
And then we wanted to talk about how the appeal process, how we felt about the appeal process.
Well, that's, I think, for a separate issue for us for tonight.
So, Your Worship, but one way to address this, you can move on to the next motion on the agenda. And later on the agenda, you have question period.
Question period, so that
or we
can
can
come
add
out
question period. As a matter of fact, you don't have it, but you can add the question period and maybe address any questions that the delegation may have.
It should be.
That would
right
be
af-
one option
Right
to do
after
that.
bylaws.
Yeah.
So. What's that?
We haven't used our 10 minutes.
Oh, we have used 4 minutes.
It's all one and the same.
Well, see, now what we're having a problem with is that you told us what you were coming for, and now you've added something.
We didn't add it. We came up. The reason that I asked to have a delegate here today was to discuss both issues. One, the money that you've given to us, and the process that we had to go through.
So if I can, bear with me, council, and all those that are speaking, please go ahead quickly. I will reset, and you have 5 minutes to get on with your worry on the process.
Your
And
Honor,
please, nothing personal.
I just want to ask you one thing. I would like to be assured that it will be not compromise the money that was already issued to us in December, because we have waited a long time to receive anything and we need to move forward.
So then what?
I'm asking you to guarantee me
I don't
that whatever
guarantee-
is said to you.
Shalima, as a person, I cannot guarantee a vote. I will not guarantee a vote as the mayor, so I can't. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask for receipt of this, of your delegation. We're going to vote, and you can come back up at question period. So thank you. So I'll move receipt of the delegation. Move receipt. Moved. Seconded. What's that? Are we done? Okay. All those in favor? Boom. Thank you very much. We'll move to the vote now. So there is a recommendation from the commission for a motion to approve the Culture and Heritage Grants Appeal Committee and recommendations that Council approve the Nanaimo African Heritage Society 2015 Cultural and Heritage Project Grant of $3,400. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Fuller. Anybody want to talk about that now?
Yes.
Okay, I will go to Councillor, one sec here. Councillor Pratt. Whoops.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that we wanted to be sure that the councillors understood in this report that we're slightly going off from the approved process for the appeal, because we did approve $3,400 for the African Heritage Society, and then they appealed that. It went to appeal. Normally, in the stated appeal process that Council approved in June, it would go back now to the Cultural and Heritage Committee, and that was what Ms. Shalima was talking about, in that would make a delay until the 15th of February. We don't want that to happen because they need the money for their February 1st event. And so that's why we're bringing it early. And what the Culture Commission wants everyone on council to know is that we're going to be bringing forward a recommendation to change that process so it works to the benefit of people that are doing an appeal, so that they aren't getting their money later than they should.
Or having to return to the
That's right.
process that already
That's
did.
right.
They just have the appeal.
Yeah.
So I have Councillor Bestwick on the queue. Whoops, one sec, please. Oh, okay. Councillor Brennan?
No.
No, Councillor Fuller.
I wanted to agree with Councillor Pratt. This was the first time they've had to use the appeal process, so they're working out the kinks in it. And unfortunately, it's in a way, it's a good thing that this happened, because that kink is now aware of and will be changed when the next round of grants come up, so that the appeal process would not jeopardize anybody receiving funding by the time they need it. So.
Or having to repeat a process.
Or repeat the process.
So, thank
yeah.
you. So, seeing nothing further, the motion is on the floor. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So that means the money was given and it will be issued over the next little while, like very quickly. Thank you very much. So moving on, 4B, Core Service Organizational Review Project Charter. The purpose to present the Core Services Review Project Charter for Council's consideration and approval. Is there any presentation, or is it a matter of just reading the document? So I'll entertain a motion that Council approves and directs staff to sign off the Core Services Organizational Review Project Charter attached to this report as presented by the WMC Western Management Consultants.
Just a clarification that I forgot to do at the beginning of the meeting. On the project charter on page number 4 of the project charter, or page 31 of the agenda, we omitted Councillor Hong's name on the committee. So we are including you, Councillor Hong, on the committee. I apologize for that.
And it's actually in the little box with all the council's name, the little green box on page 4 of that document, or 31, right up there. They forgot Councillor Hong, poor Jerry. So that's been corrected now. That will be corrected. So the motion, we have it?
I'll move that.
Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Fuller. So any debate? Councillor Bestwick. You're on. And then Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. No debate, but I'm not certain what page it is, where the description is in relation to the NEDC. I would just like clarity in so much as that number 3, that it also includes tourism.
In the list of 20, I think is what you're referencing. Number 14 on the list of 20.
So under number 12 on page 35, it indicates Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation. That's what I'm referring to. The resulting list of in-scope service areas is number 12, for those that have it in front of them. I would like clarification that includes tourism and DNBIA for clarification purposes.
Go ahead, staff. Go ahead.
Your Worship, Councillor Bestwick, the DNBI is not included in with the NEDC at this point. It was listed as a separate item for us. When it was put in front of the members of council to indicate their priorities, it was not highly rated.
Thank you. It was an inclusive item from my perspective. There wasn't a list provided to us with check marks in a box to say that something would or wouldn't be rated 1 through 5 or 1 through 10. It was incumbent upon us individually to submit areas that we would like to have the scope of its efficiencies reviewed. While it may not have been some, and some in fact didn't submit, did they, their lists?
That's what I've heard. I don't know for certain.
Yes, so some in fact didn't even submit lists. So those that did submit lists, I don't think should be penalized for submitting their list that wasn't highly regarded by others when others, some, didn't submit a list. So I don't know how we can start by the preferences of some when some didn't even have a preference. So it's a preference of mine, and I would like it included into the NEDC line item with tourism and DNBIA. That is my preference. And if I need to make a motion, I'll make a motion. If I don't need to make a motion, and you'll just take that under advisement and it'll be included in that item, great. So I look for direction.
Mrs. Samra?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. The charter is being presented to Mayor and Council for your approval as this DNI, I always get the acronym wrong, isn't on the list. It will require an amendment. Tourism will be covered, but the other portion would require an addition to the list. And we'd take that back to the consultants to see how that would impact their schedule or costs for the project.
Well, I'm quite comfortable to make a motion to include it to item 12, which is NEDC, then /DNBIA.
So you're proposing that now. Is there a seconder for that? I'll second it. Okay, we have a second. So we have a motion on the floor currently to include the downtown neighborhood business improvement area into the review. And we have it seconded. So, Councillor Bestwick, would you like to speak any more? Who else would like to speak to this issue, to the motion? Councillor Yoakum, 1 sec, please. Councillor Yoakum, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I definitely think that DNBIA should be included as tourism, as well as for the simple fact they're ancillary groups receiving taxpayer-funded dollars. Don't know enough about it. So this core review service, I think, of all branches that were the city, the taxpayer funding, should be reviewed. And I actually had those on my list as well. But nevertheless, I'm definitely in support of the motion, put it under whatever line item. And so for clarity, tourism is under NEDC?
Yes.
Thank you. And I don't think we're missing any of those ancillary groups. And DNBIA is over a couple $100,000, so it's well worth the conversation. Thank you, in my view. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else on the motion? Councillor Fuller, Councillor Bestwick, are you finished with that? Councillor Brennan on the motion? 1 sec.
Push that button, and I don't know why it keeps
Don't need
being
it,
red. No.
Councillor Fuller.
In my own opinion, I think what's happened here is we looked at these as with 3 names, NEDC, DNBIA, and tourism. However, they're all similarly funded. And I think it is that type of similarly funded groups that we would like to be included in the core review. And I did the same in my recommendations. I named them all individually, but I think that's a specific type of funding that could be looked at as a single type of service as well, as opposed to the individual organizations. I don't know. That was just my thought. But I would like to see all of these looked at as an entity.
You're in favor of the motion?
Yes.
Councillor Yoakum. 1 sec. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Samra, in regards to, I'm really glad we're having this conversation because I believe we haven't done a core review in the city. And nevertheless, another major the taxpayers fund is the conference, VICC. And where in that is on this list? The Vancouver Island Conference Center.
We had it, we had a discussion about that at our last meeting, and because of the work that we're doing for the hotel, the RFP going out and doing the feasibility study, because we're limited in the amount of things that we can do in the core services review, we're getting that information through that other process. It's looking at a number of other things as well, but information will come from that process as well.
Well, just to wrap up, Mr. Kipp, is well, that's a major. That I just mentioned an item that was a concern for me for a couple $100,000 or so, which is not chump change. Now I'm talking about something that we lose. I don't know, $3 million a year, $4 million a year.
Well, there's cost to that. That's cost
anyways,
built into the whole.
so I'm not trying to be difficult here, but we have to tackle that elephant. So do I have insurances that we're going to be looking at it somewhere? At that headache, because I'm not comfortable. That was one on my list as well, VICC.
Okay. The purpose of the feasibility study for VICC is looking at it in the context of the hotel and the hotel process. So it won't look at it into the same detail as it would be looked at in this process. So if you want a more comprehensive review, then I would recommend that you add that to the list.
Okay, so just to wrap up, I'm just not comfortable at the end of my term here. I just want the city and the taxpayers thinking, everything's okay, and we'll just leave it as is, because we have a responsibility here that the business as usual does not work, especially that's a perfect model that's not working. So I hope somehow we really get a grip on that and start looking at that. I think it should be in this core review, personally, but I wasn't at the last meeting you guys had last week, so I apologize for that, as well as at my day job. But I hope we do something, and if we don't, I'm going to trust we're going to do it somewhere, but I don't like living and working in trust, because we're dealing with multi-millions here. Sorry, Mr. Kipp, so when I look at this list, a lot of these things are intertwined or internal. This should be one of those number items. I'm sort of adamant on that. Thank you.
If I can on this, I think the corporate-wide processes should include some of that. That's item number 1 is strategic planning, business planning, and budgeting. Number 2 is the capital project planning and development, asset management, project management, purchasing and contract administration, and performance measures. So those are the corporate-wide processes that we're going to review. So we could encompass a few of the items from the VICC into that, some of their performance measures, maybe some of their project management when we look at that. So I think that's a possibility for that. So we'll dance around it. No. Councillor Bestwick?
Thank you. Well, what I'm hearing clearly, if we're trying to find somewhere that might incorporate a piece of it off the side of a desk that might fit into strategic planning, that might fit into asset management, we were just clearly informed that the VICC does not form any component, any part of the core services review, but it will be reviewed in the information that we're gathering as it relates to the hotel and how the conference center ties into the hotel and so on. So, which would be an absolutely totally different undertaking and information than a core services review. Totally different animals, totally different things, nowhere on the same page, not even close.
So do you want to add the VICC
I'll finish.
into that?
So there's nowhere, if we approve this document with the minor amendment to ensure that to send the WSM off to tell us how the DNBIA, what its cost will be to be included in this, because it's not, there will be no discussion, none, about VICC, none. So if we don't have the request that the VICC form part of the core services review, at least to the point where WSM comes back with what it would cost us to add to the list. And don't forget, our list was 21, and then the list was added by 7, and then the reduced list came back at the advice of the core service review management team to arrive where we could complete this task on time, on budget. And it's not inclusive of our largest and most expensive asset that has a considerable amount of interest in the community and has for 7 years, and we're not going to include it.
So we are going to include it with an amendment? And we should. I think it should be included.
So if we think that that's what a core services review should accomplish, since we've never done one, and we won't do another one probably for 50 years, then I think we should do one. I think that it should be added to the list of 14 that Vancouver Island Conference Center is also, but I was leaving the first portion of this to tourism and adding DNVIA, and then I would like to come back to add VICC as item 15 for and ask the core service review people to come back and tell us how much that's going to be to add. And if we don't like what we hear, then we have an option to
get rid of something else.
Well, we have an option to not do it. We have an option to replace something with it, or we'll have options. And I just want to make another comment. This is a committee of the whole meeting that starts at 4:30, that we sit around a table and we roll up our sleeves and we get down to this type of conversation in business. And so when we have to be doing so formal and sitting here telling each other that we can't talk and we've said too much and let's move on and let's get going, this is a critical, unanimous decision of this council to do a core services review. So there's nobody that's going to tell me in a committee of the whole meeting not to talk, because we should be sitting in a different room, not this one, around a square rectangular table with our sleeves rolled up, looking at each other face to face and having a real conversation instead of this thing that we have every second Monday. Now I'm done. And now my 5-minute delegation is up.
So I know I couldn't agree more, Councillor Bestwick. So we do have a motion on the floor. Councillor Brennan? And Tracy wants to speak, I think. Councillor Brennan, so I'm going to push to Mrs. Sammer. Go ahead.
So listening to your comments, this is your process, and you're able to determine what you want on your list. It's been a challenge to reduce it to fit a shortened time frame and the budget. But we're at this point, and my recommendation is that you add what you need to add at this point, and during the scoping of phase 2, we'll work with the consultants to see what that means, because they have to scope each of the different, they're doing a detailed work plan for each of the different things that they're looking at, and be able to report back to you more fully on what those implications are. But if you have it on the list, then we know that that's what's going to be looked at, and we prepare for it.
Councillor Brennan?
Thank you. I'd just like to clarify, this is a city council meeting. It's not a committee of the whole meeting. So there is a little different standard with regard. So there is. I guess what I would need to know this evening is about the time frame. And clearly the time frame would have to be altered. We have the time frame set out for us. So the next sort of target date we're looking at would be February 15th. I don't know whether we can meet these timeframes. We're supposed to be finished here May 13th, so those things will also have to be changed. I'm assuming that we will either be adding these things and deleting others in order to accommodate, or we'll be adding them and adding additional days on, additional dollars then. None of this is clear to me.
Well, I think that's what we're asking here, is that the consultant could come back to us with some of this.
Yes, but I think we're being asked to add these things without knowing how it will affect the project as presented to us, with the information, quite frankly, in the report that Vancouver Island Conference Centre was being eliminated from this review.
Anything further? Next in queue, Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Just for clarification, that's why I'm bringing it up. The report that comes with the agenda is saying that we're eliminating it. So when I got the agenda saying that we're eliminating it, this is where I get a chance, like, to talk to it, to speak to it. The report's already done. We're eliminating it. I'm not in favor of eliminating the VICC from the core services review. So this is where I get a chance to express my views on every report that's on here after the agendas have come out. Not sometime yesterday or the day before or the day before that, but tonight, here, in open.
That's it, Councillor Bestwick. Okay, Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Chair. The core review is a very important document for us and a very important process and undertaking that we're doing. So if we need to add more things to it to get a better study report, I think it's in our best interest to do it, because I don't plan on doing this again in my term, in this term. So let's get an entire picture of our entire city to the best of our ability with the time that's permitted and the resources that we do have, as long as it's not too much. Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. I struggled from day one with the seemingly arbitrary number of 20 topics to narrow down to, and I found that very difficult. And although, in fairness to the Western management, we have had a full day meeting with them, and we, I thought, came to pretty much consensus. But I certainly feel that VICC is a very important asset that needs to be looked at, as does tourism. I guess what I'm thinking, I'm wondering if the consultants could come back to us as soon as possible with a revised timeline and costings to incorporate the topics that I'm hearing mentioned around the table here. I know we have another meeting on February the 1st. I don't know if that would be possible. Thank you.
Okay. So, no one further. We have a motion on the floor with the one item, and it's to include the DMBIA.
That's correct, Your Worship. That's all I heard on the motion on the floor, is to include DMBIA on item 12 as part of the NEDC item.
Is there going to be a second motion then for VICC?
I will.
Okay, well, so we'll deal with this one first then. Okay, so we have the motion on the floor to include DMBIA in the number 12 with the economic development, and tourism will be included in that. So, no further question? Oh, Councillor Pratt.
So my only question is, are we asking that for sure these are going to be in there, or we are asking to have a modification of what we've got here to fit the timeline and budget, or are we just arbitrarily saying we're going to add these to everything else that we've got here? I just want to be clear about that so I know what I'm voting on.
Mover, go ahead.
I'm asking that the DMBIA be included into line number 12, economic development, which includes tourism, and the DMBIA. And then I understand that Councillor Yoakum is going to come back and ask that item 15 be added, which is Vancouver Island Conference Centre.
So again, just to clarify, as a follow-up, no matter what the time frame or cost is, you're happy with that?
Correct.
Thank you. That's what I want.
Okay, so we have the motion on the floor. No further debate. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to add under 7 on the corporate-wide processes, or 15, whatever Guillermo thinks we're best placed. 15. That the VICC be included in the scope of the in-scope service areas under line, make number 15 the VICC. Just a quick comment would be, I know we're under time frames, we want to get that, but for whatever reason, Jerry's right, we got to do this right, and it took us over a year to even get to this point. So I look forward to doing this. And it's such a big ticket item. And I'm not saying it's a wrong or bad thing. Let's just see let's get the best usage out of it and see what's going on, where there's gaps or strengths. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Bestwick then. Okay, any questions on it? Councillor Fuller?
I'm going to support the motion. Prior to my heart attack, I'd made a notice of motion with regards to the whole repurposing and reuse and possibly sale of the VICC. So I think it needs to be included in this, in the core review. I recognize that we are also doing an RFP process. I fully expect to come out of that, which comes out of many of these things. The need to build the convention center even bigger. We haven't heard that one yet, but that's a common factor with convention centers that aren't making money. Build them bigger. So if we can get this in the core review somehow, then I would really like to do it. Thanks.
Okay, so there's no one else in the queue. And so we're now voting on the motion to include this, and then we will come back to the main motion for that. So this is to add the VICC under in-scope service areas number 15. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. So now I need a motion that council approves and directs staff to sign off the core review services organization review as amended, project charter attached to the report as presented. Is that good? So I need a move by Councillor Bestwick, second by Councillor Fuller. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. I can't vote to approve this as presented, and not only because there have been additions made to it, but no additions to the time frame that that we can look at and say, yeah, that time frame makes sense. So that piece isn't there yet. I would prefer to see it referred back and get those answers before we approve the whole package. But in addition, I'm really, really disappointed that the time frame is so short and so tight and provides so very little opportunity for the public to comment along the way. We spent hours working with Dr. Dinesh, is that right? And one of the things that we were adamant about was that the community, the stakeholders and the community as two separate bodies be involved at many different stages along the way. That was when we expected to take our time with this, and I guess we used words like we better do it right. And now we're at a different place in this whole process, and we've decided that we don't need that much time, and that the community can be consulted at the very close to the end of this process. I think that when we're talking about the DNBIA and I think the importance to downtown, I think when we're talking about the VICC and the importance to downtown, that when we're talking about recreation and environment, that we need to give sufficient time for the community to say what are the values they want us to consider. I don't think it's adequate to prepare something and then say to the community, this is what we've designed, what do you think? I think that we need to do check-ins all along the way, and I don't think that this process provides for that. As it is, we have a list of more than 14 now, and we are expecting to move forward and have a report tabled to us for our approval by May 13th. That's just way too tight to examine all of the items on this list. I think we'll shortchange our citizens, I think we'll shortchange our businesses, and I think we'll shortchange our downtown. And for those reasons, I can't support this.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick? Councillor Hong?
Thank you. Just because we're looking at these items doesn't mean I want to scrap them. This is not the intention of this process. I want to see how we're doing. If I'm going to scrap anything, I'm going to definitely consult the public and get their input before we make that kind of decision. We're just investigating and looking into these items. I want to look at everything if we can. Thank you.
Councillor Pratt?
Thank you. Just with Councillor Hong saying that now, I remember the discussion, and sometimes I don't always remember, but I do remember the discussion around the fact that what we wanted was to get a report, and then really where we were really feeling that we were going to make some changes or not, we would involve the public at that point, because that's where they need to be involved, is how do we move forward with the various results of this project, of this core review. So I don't see us not including the public. It's a matter of timing, and they are involved in this process according to the schematic. And I see the public being involved with our decision-making around the results of the report.
Thank you. Councillor Yoakum?
Oh, thank you. Just quickly, Mr. Chair, in regards to WMC, is they've done core reviews nationally and probably globally, but I know nationally when we look through you guys' portfolio. So nevertheless, if time is an issue, this is also WMC's working time frame. So if WMC may need a time, they may be shorter, maybe longer, and Ms. Samra will bring updates and reports along the process. So time is always a concern, but I'm not too concerned considering the working relationship those two professionals have in the corner, Mr. Chair, and they'll update us on what's needed or what's may not needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe, then Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to echo the comments of the last couple of speakers. I have great confidence in Western Management Consultants, and I think I made it clear at one of our earlier meetings that I very much want to see public involvement, but I felt it would be more valuable later on at the stage where recommendations are being made, and that public comment can be more focused and directed, and we can definitely hear it at that point. So I have no problem moving forward now. Thank you.
Councillor Fuller.
I, like Councillor Thorpe, agree with a number of the councillors here. Public participation has always been one of my strongest points. It's what's kept me involved over the years, and I've seen some pretty shoddy public participation processes over those years. If the public looks at Appendix A, IAP2 Spectrum, which is in the WMC report on the agenda tonight, they will see where they get involved, how they get involved, how they collaborate, and how they're going to be empowered to collaborate. If the public doesn't like this, I fully expect them to let us know, because they are good at it.
Thank you.
So I'm going to support this.
Councillor Brennan, anything new?
Yes. Just to wrap up, I think there's a difference between handing the public a document at the end with our proposals in it and having them comment. And that's exactly what the problem identified by the community was to the City Council when we began to plan the VICC. There was an enormous pushback from the community saying, you have just developed a plan and then you have handed it to us and asked us to comment. And that's not what we want. We want to be involved in the design of the plan, in the vision of the plan. We want to be involved from day one. And this is the process that was used to present the VICC to the community, and it was soundly, as my friend Councillor Fuller says, there was some processes we have done on council that have not been well received by the community. I suspect this will be one of them.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick?
Thank you. Well, I just wanted to say that the community would be extremely disappointed if the Vancouver Island Conference Centre didn't form part of the core services review. So I agree with what everybody has said here tonight, everything, every word everybody has said, and I hope that we can now vote and proceed.
Yeah, I'd like to. So my point on that is we've delayed this a number of times. We've had a number of people speak against the whole core services process for a number of years, fight against it for a number of years, and now we're on to the core service review. And to talk now that we're delaying some people input where we've been talking about this for 9 years or so, it's kind of funny to me. But anyways, I'm ready for the vote. So this will be the amended approvals for 15 and the DNBA under 12 to be included. So the motion, we're ready to go for the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? I note that Councillor Brennan is opposed. The rest of the councillors in favor. Thank you very much. So moving on, 5A, bylaws. I require a motion for zoning amendment.
Your worship.
Oh,
We added one item is 4C.
4C,
It's
sorry.
about the integrity group, and Ms. Samra was going to do
Integrity
some
group,
comments.
yes. Ms. Samra, thank you very much for reminding me of that.
Okay.
Ms. Samra,
Thank you.
sorry about that.
Okay. Thank you. I believe it was at in-camera meeting on January 11th. Council asked me to take a look at a work arrangement with the Integrity Group. And the next day I started getting media requests about the Integrity Group contract and process before I had a chance to actually get into an investigation to see what there was for that. So here's, and today I received a call from the provincial government, the Ministry of, it's a new longer title, but it includes local government, asking about this particular contract because they had heard that it had been terminated. So I've been fielding questions. What I can report back to you on, and I checked with the FOI expert at City Hall, I can tell you that generally the City of Nanaimo has worked with Integrity Group for a couple of years. Our HR department uses that company for investigations and training, workplace harassment and respectful workplace training. So there's an ongoing working relationship with this company. I can advise that $20,000 was allocated for a specific project for Mayor and Council. It's my understanding, and I was advised, but this is before my time, that it was initiated by the Mayor and that it was a facilitated process with Mayor and Council to look at ways to maximize functionality. There was a proposal that was sent to the city, but I was unable to locate other items. I understand that it was reported by the press in June or July of last year that $50,000 had been spent on this particular project at that time, but our corporate records and invoicing doesn't indicate that. We didn't receive invoicing until just recently. So I don't know how that got reported or what that was based on.
Anything further?
So there was an arrangement for Mayor and Council to work on its functionality and ways to maximize that, and $20,000 was allocated for it.
Thank you. Councillor Yoakum?
Thank you. Ms. Samra, is this Integrity Group the Miss Mackenzie project? Or I get these mixed up, so is that what it is?
Yes, Heather McKenzie was the lead contact for this particular proposal. I guess let's call it a proposal.
Okay, so nevertheless, is that the one when I left that meeting in February and someone discussed, it was nevertheless, was that when it was decided to bring in, the mayor wanted to bring someone in and try to get us sold I don't know what the right word would be, but nevertheless to play in the sandbox together?
I'm not aware of...
Yeah, I don't know either. Okay, so nevertheless, I was never in support of the Heather McKenzie work, not her personally, but the project. I don't need someone to come and tell me how to interact with people. I do this on a day job in this table quite fine, just because votes go a certain way. But my question I'd have, why would the provincial government be calling with concerns over a third-party contract from the city of Nanaimo, Integrity's contract with? So when did they call in regards to whoever Corex or whoever our suppliers are? Like what? Why would they be calling? Why was this Fassbender's ministry?
Yes.
Why would they be calling? Do you know of any reason? Does anyone run a table?
Well, if I may talk on this, I'm a bit concerned that, first off, this was an in-camera report again, talked in camera, and the paper finds out about it. That's disturbing. It's really disturbing. And then somehow the minister finds out about it or is contacted. It's getting to be the trust is breaking down sometimes when that type of stuff happens. So I think that's your concern.
Well, my concern is, I never thought of that. But secondly, Mr. Kipp, is why, since when does the provincial government, earlier I heard a delegate speak about the hiring process. Now I'm hearing their concern about who we use for consultants. Whatever my view is that work or not is irrelevant at this point. I don't think it's necessary, and I don't want to spend $50,000 on that stuff. But nevertheless, now they're worrying about who we contract, and if we terminate a contract of Integrity Group. Is that what I heard?
Yes.
Wow. I find it totally offside, completely offside. Not yourself, but the provincial government, HR. I agree. I'm starting to agree with that lady. We do need an investigation of this whole all this nonsense. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
It's interesting to hear that the initial idea behind this was to, quote, maximize functionality. My personal opinion, it hasn't even come close to doing that, and we were totally in our rights to stop that contract. I mean, what this has resulted in, this maximizing of functionality, is breaches of conflict, lack of trust. We got a minister overstepping his bounds, in my opinion, the provincial government trying to step in on us and determine who we should hire and what we should be hiring them for. I'm quite happy that we terminated the contract, and I would like to think that the community would be quite happy we terminated a contract, because we could spend endless dollars on this, and I believe spending those dollars on a deeper investigation into what's happened around this and the breaches of confidentiality would be well spent money.
Go ahead, Ms. Starmer.
I've had a high level of discomfort in dealing with this particular file, and I sought legal advice before I returned the telephone call to the ministry, because this is internal to the city, and this issue was discussed in camera. So technically, I kind of would like to recommend that you guys have a motion now that sanctions the discussion around this particular issue, because it was still in camera when the media called and appeared to know more than I did about this particular contract. So,
Zammer, can I suggest that we have an in-camera meeting after this meeting, and we bring it up on there?
you could.
Talk about it, or?
Well, we're talking about it now, so it'd be nice.
Censure everyone from talking about it now to stop. Well, here, Councillor Bestwick is up, then Councillor Pratt. Let's continue this, please. Go ahead, Councillor Bestwick.
Well, I just want to say thank you for the update.
Excuse me, Diane?
I need to know what the motion is.
There isn't one yet. We're just having.
Mr. Fuller said I'd make that motion.
So I'm willing to make that, but it wasn't seconded.
There was no second.
No motion.
There's no motion.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Bestwick. You have the floor.
I'd just like to thank Ms. Samra for the update and the fact that we're getting nearer to full disclosure. And we are getting nearer to truth and reconciliation of what takes place in our in-camera meetings. That deserves to stay in those rooms and not to be discussed outside of that room with members of the media or friends of the media or friends of social media that may result in the information which clearly ends up where it shouldn't. So if that means that so I thank you for that update in open. And if we need to minimize this conversation and take this conversation in camera, now that you've given us that update, unless there's any more information that you'd like to share with us on it, then I suggest that we do take this motion or this information and include the conversation on tonight's in-camera agenda immediately to follow this meeting.
Councillor Pratt?
Thank you. I just wanted clarification on what you were saying, and I think that's what you were saying. Is that not correct, Ms. Samra? More or less?
Yeah.
Just stop the conversation? Okay. So I agree with Councillor Bestwick that we should go in camera after we finish this meeting.
Okay, so I'll end discussion on this issue now. Thank you. So that's the end of that one. Now we have 5A.
I would so move that zoning amendment bylaw 2015-4500-088 to permit a site-specific liquor store at 2000 Highland Highway North be adopted.
Seconder? Seconded by Councillor Hong. Anybody need any information, discussion? No? So I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Note that Councillor Brennan is opposed. The rest of council is in favor. So that's the end of the agenda. Is there no need for a question period? Does anyone have any questions? Come on up.
Your Worship, you remember that you were going to invite the African Society back again?
Yeah. Shalima. So this is question period, and typically we ask you to have a little bit of a brief update and then ask a question, but I understand you have more of an opinion, so I'll give you some leeway on this. But I don't want it to go on for too long, if you appreciate. Thank you. So your microphone is on. Oh, I turned it off when they turned it on. There, it's on. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Name again, please.
My name is Sherry Berry, 38 Front Street. I'm reading, do any of you have the report to council? That's great, thank you. I'm reading on page 3. It describes the strategic plan's considerations we feel that Nanaimo African Heritage Society works diligently to build community partnerships. The City of Nanaimo wants to work with the arts, culture, and heritage sector in providing cultural experiences for residents and visitors that enhance the quality of life and create community. As part of the creative sector, arts, culture, and heritage, these organizations contribute $93 million in direct economic benefit to the community. Through collaboration with the arts, culture, and heritage sector, we promote and celebrate Nanaimo's uniqueness and cultural vitality to residents and visitors. Based on that information, we looked at, after we had our appeal meeting, we feel that we were not heard. We went there specifically to find out, we knew we couldn't challenge the amount that we had been funded. We went there with the specific to find out answers, what we could have improved upon, what information was missing, what parts and pieces should we improve upon, because we spent weeks preparing that presentation. That's why we went there looking for specifics, because we're struggling as an organization to try and fund the caliber of events that we know we could bring to Nanaimo. It wasn't until after we had a few questions that were not answered, primarily what we can do as a society to improve, and secondly, how can we increase the multicultural element on the committee? We're feeling that maybe 3 people is too small. Maybe we need to expand, we meaning all of us, expand that cultural mosaic so that we're getting more fair representation a little less unbiased or prejudiced. It wasn't until after the meeting that we were emailed, Rebecca sent us the Commission's recommendations, and you have those in front of you. There are a few addition errors that somebody might note. When you add them all up, though, it says specifically that the available funds for projects has been increased to $33,363. And when you look down at the total of $25,050 and add our $3,400 to that, that doesn't come to $333,363. There's a missing $4,913. I don't know where that's supposed to go. The second item we wanted to look at is on page 2, the project grants. We averaged out what the societies, the other 9 societies, it averaged about 15.8% of their total budgets they were requesting. We were well within that. Nanaimo African Heritage requested 15.5% for our proposal. For a first-class event at VICC, it's been mentioned here how they're struggling. We wanted to bring in, well-known names. We had people lined up. We had just the most incredible event set up, but we had no funding to do it. So we've had to backtrack. The third point, our executive averaged the percentages of how the actual funds requested compared to what they were granted. And the average was about 83%. Nanaimo African Heritage was given 33%. The lowest other person on that list was 70%. Had we been given an average, or even the lowest amount, that would have been $7,000. That really would have furthered our ability to provide a quality event. When we look at the grant recommendations, the average was 13% of their total project budgets. We were granted 5%. So our question to council, and I know you can't answer this, but just, is it an oversight? Does nobody even really look at the numbers? How are we assigned that amount? So I was really struggling to figure out Diane Johnson's comment when we asked her that. She said, we're giving you 300% more than you got other years. 300% of pennies. It was nothing. So I just really am so... Councillor Yoakum, your remark about the Indigenous peoples and how they're finally getting the recognition they deserve. We feel the African community contributed incredibly to this island, to our culture, to our cities, our country, and we want to recognize those people. And we encourage all of you to come out to our events. I never knew anything about Black history until Shalima kind of rooked me into some activities, and I have so enjoyed learning more about what made us a country. And I encourage you to all show up. One other thing I wanted to say, it seems to me when you look at that list that maybe we should have taken up playing bagpipes, opera, or ballroom dancing to qualify for more money. And I'm sure that's not what you're trying to tell us. I also have a comment that's unrelated to this. We're hosting a Toastmasters Bring a Friend Day tomorrow. I'm one of the members of Malaspina Toastmasters. It's one of the oldest groups in Canada, here in Nanaimo. 7 o'clock, Country Grocer tomorrow morning. Shalima and I counted odds and ums tonight. There were way too many to mention. So come and join us tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock. We'd love to see you.
I just want to add about the comment about Toastmasters. I started taking Toastmasters for Speaking Better, and I learned how OMS is so bad. It's so bad. It makes your whole presentation very difficult to listen to when you keep going That's one thing I want to add. The other thing I want to add is the Nanaimo African Heritage Society was here last year. I don't like being here. I'd much rather be watching Carnation Street, honestly. There's a lot of work goes into processing these funding. We've come here last year and an appeal process was established because we were here last year. And here we are again. We're only asking for fairness. If you personally don't feel that coming to a particularly Black history program, that's That is your personal opinion. However, if you took this to the public is the one who calls us and asks us why it's so blatantly unfair. The process for me and for our society is flawed. It is not based on what we bring as an economical, viable community event. We are just as strong as the Port Theatre or any of the other symphonies, Francophone, all of them. We are equally valued. We want to be equally valued, and you keep telling us each year you are not valued for 16 years, giving us the low amount of money and expecting us to survive. Or are you expecting us to survive? I ask council to please investigate this. I do not want to be an 80-year-old lady trying to give presents to these young black children and children of mixed races in this community that it would be a fair process. We've asked, I said to the mayor last year, what he said was we're putting our money where our mouth is. I said it would remain to be seen. And here we are again. Thank you very much for listening to us, and thank you very much for having us here with this point.
So, if I can say too, you had 3 questions, and I appreciate the angst that you have on this issue. I understand it. We will, and we have tried to clean these up and make this. The process was flawed, and we want to change that now, so you won't go to an appeal process, or if you have an appeal, that's it, and then that's over. So, Councillor Pratt, I think, yeah, but there was 3 questions. I don't know if we can answer them tonight. It's how we can help you improve when that comes through. Where is this $4,000 that's left over? Well, I understand that they don't always give out all the money. They judge and value. They have a matrix that they use for it. And then the request on, what was the other one? On how money is given out. And I think that's the bigger issue that I think we'll have to answer later. But those are the 3 questions that I gathered from you. But Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Thank you. I really appreciate all of your comments, so thank you very much for coming. I know it's hard to come up here and speak. And I'm doing it, and too bad.
We all did it.
So, I was looking at the allocations today, and I know the process that was involved. I sit on the committee. However, I was away due to family health issues and a death in the family, and so did not take part in it. But the other members of the commission did take part in it. It was a very extensive process, a very fair process, and it was done based on a matrix. And until that matrix came out, nobody knew what the results were going to be. I just want to look at the actual results, and I went through these, and I based it on the percentage of the budget that was being funded. 7 groups received between 2 and 8% of their budget in funding. 7 between 10 and 16% of their budget. 7 received 16 to 20%, and 4 received over 20% of their budget. And when I look at that, and in actual fact, with your new budget in place, it's 13% of your budget that you were funded for, 12.8%. So it was a fair process, and all I can say is being a part of that process and understanding what the process was, it's a fair process. These are people who come from our community to volunteer to do this work. It takes a lot of time for them to do it. They are just members of our community that are very passionate about the arts and culture in our community, and are willing to sit on a committee and do this kind of work. So to say that the process is unfair, I don't believe that it was unfair, and I'm sorry that you're feeling that you were badly treated. I also would like to say that if you feel that you need some help and you have specific questions and help that you want to get, I would refer you to the United Way. They have a lot of resources in place where they can get people from the community to help you. Our staff are willing to help when you have questions around your applications. And I'm sure there are other people in the community, in the nonprofit community, that would be willing to help. I know when I was involved in the nonprofit community that the resources out there are many, and there are lots of people out there willing to help you. You just have to find them and make a network.
May we say something again? Councilman Pratt, last year when we were here, we walked out of this room and with you whispering behind the scenes saying that we did not spend the money that was allocated to us. We found that very, very unprofessional. And in the process of this repeal process, there were questions thrown at us as though we were on a tribunal. It had the feeling of a tribunal as opposed to a request of why we needed the money. We were told how we're supposed to go forward with our programs. You do not tell anyone else how they go through with their process. You answer the application. The application was answered fairly. We are, accordingly to you, accordingly to the committee, that all of our scores are answered. So all the things that you base your criteria on, we're eligible for that.
Yeah, that criteria, we met 100%.
And asking us to go to other nonprofits, it's the other nonprofits who are our colleagues in the community who calls us. Yes, they're willing to help us because they see the injustice and the unfairness of how the money is allocated. The one thing that I always want to say is we are taxpayers too. Part of that money is money that we pay. That's a multicultural. If you're trying to say cultural and heritage in our community, what cultures are you leaving out? There's a big vast of cultures that you leave out. And yes, we noted that you paid more attention to Métis. Thank God that you did that for them because it was better than last year.
Shalima, I'm going to have to
I'm
continue
sorry,
along.
I'm just,
I understand.
I
I understand.
hear the same diatribe all the time.
But
It's
could you
time
do
to
me a favor then?
investigate what
Have you
you're
written this
doing.
down for us? Could you write it down for us, your concerns? Write it down and send it to us, please.
Yes,
Write it down and
no
send
problem.
the concerns to us.
Thank you
Counselor-
for hearing us.
Councillor
Unless
Fuller,
you have
or
some questions.
any questions for the delegations? It's question period, remember?
Yeah, I want to thank you for, well, he's...
Go ahead.
Okay. I want to thank you for bringing forward your concerns and mentioning numbers, because I really hadn't taken that close of a look at things. And I don't doubt Councillor Pratt's numbers that she came up with. But just in looking at these, I can see where you would have concerns. The project grant recommendations, every one of them except the Nanaimo African Heritage Society received far more than 50% of their ask. Far more received more than 50% of their ask. I'm not talking about the percentage of the budget or anything like that. Harbour City Jazz asked for 1,000. They got 1,000. Nanaimo African Heritage Society received 1/3. That raises questions for me that one organization would receive far less than other ones. That's up to the cultural committee to figure out those things and work them out. And it's up to people like you that have those concerns to bring them forward and bring them forward to council, because in some ways that's the only way the committees are going to hear the concerns of the people that apply for the grants. We do have the appeal process. They're working on getting that better. Perhaps some other stuff can be worked on and gotten better in the future. But that's up to the committee.
Thank you, Councilman. And I just wanted to add one more thing. The process, we questioned the process because there was an announcement that we put an ad in the paper for people to sit on these committees. We would like to see Black people, Chinese people, East Indian people. We would like to see what our community represents as a whole, as cultural. It is somewhat biased. If you do not like black performances, or you don't like gospel
Shalima,
music, or
you
you
said
don't
that-
like,
Yeah.
I don't
Shalima,
know, I
please
don't
stop.
know.
What I'm going to tell you is, we can't make people apply for our committee. We can't.
Can I say something? You know, but approach them. We are living in a time where people who feel oppressed, they go back into their where they're comfortable at. They don't come out. We keep saying we're on the Shenemos first territory. I work with the Shenemo people. A lot of us work with Shenemo. We go out and we knock on their doors and we ask them to attend our events, because we know when they're looking in the media, it says Black History. So some of those folks think that they're not supposed to come. So I go and I knock on their doors and say, you are welcome. You are part of our community. That's what we want. We want to educate you about the contributions that Black people play to our country. We want to educate people. It's not for just Black people to come. We invite the whole community to come out, and a lot of people do. We want to be taken seriously. I just want to be part of this community. I'm proud of my community. I'm here. I'm on the front line constantly. I've been doing this for 16 years. If I'm not working with children of all nationalities, I'm doing the Nanaimo African Heritage Society. And we're
Shalima,
told constantly
I
we are not
appreciate
worthy.
the work you do, and so does everyone at this table. Does a lot of work, and we will try to get this straightened up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.
So, no further.
No.
Move procedural motion.
Jim, I got a quick question. That wasn't to the delegate, that's why I waited.
Go ahead.
In regards to, are we going to have, Ms. Samra, are we going to have a conversation on the committee's recommendation for the appeal? Because when I see staff propose changes for the appeal process in the future, the decisions go directly to council. The whole point is committees to unpoliticize this. Otherwise, we'll be lined up with people every night, which is rightfully so. So I like it to be sorted out at the committee level. I seen this problem in my former role where when I used to be on chief and council, when managers say, oh, bring it to council, and it was never the right process. So I'm a little uncomfortable with some of the recommendations. The appeal process will go directly to us. Because I won't know the details, and the person's only going to have 5 minutes to say their spiel. So I'll let you look at that. Thanks.
Councillor Hall. Oops, one sec.
Yep.
Thank you. Just to comment before we leave that, I want to recognize the arts and cultural groups and the organizations. There are a lot of them in our city that don't show up on this. A lot. Robert Burns today. They have an event. They didn't come to here asking for money. Chinese New Year's is happening at the Port Theatre. They didn't come asking for money. So we are multicultural. Just because they're not here not asking for money doesn't mean that we are not multicultural by any means. I'm proud of Nanaimo and the multicultural history that we have and the events that these organizations put on with or without our help. Thank you.
Oh, okay. I've opened up question period.
have a few questions here, and one of them is referring to the mayor signing a contract with Integrity Group. If I touch on something that is out of order,
I'll slam you.
Please. Did council approve this?
It was an initiative of the mayor. He felt that it was necessary in his mind.
So under what authority is it possible for the mayor to go on his own and engage in a service without council support?
I suggest you have to pose that question to the mayor.
Do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Motion to adjourn the meeting, close the meeting to the public and go in camera. So moved. Seconded. All those in favor? Oh, we'll head back into the other room.